So that was the first experience I had on stage, and I found it really frightening. But shortly after overcoming the problem of fear, I became really intrigued in figuring out how to tell stories, and I felt a sense of community with the people I was working with that I had never really felt before in my life. I was always kind of a loner, and I wasn't a sports guy. I wasn't a student council kind of guy. So I felt useful in storytelling, and I felt fulfilled by it, and so that's something I thought I ought to give a shot. A guy named Bill Fusick, who was enormously generous to me and very important at the beginning of my career. And Bill put my wife and I up in his spare bedroom, and I did a play at Laguna. I got a job, moved out of the spare bedroom into our own place, did another play in Laguna. And the second play I did in Laguna, the music was John Brown's Body, and it had incidental music. It was done by a guy named Ian Bernard, who was connected at Columbia Pictures, and he sent me up to Columbia to meet the head of casting. And that was a very lucky afternoon for me. By the time I left, it had been proposed that I might be a contract player for Columbia. I didn't know what that was, so I asked, and the guy said, well, it means $150 a week and 7-year contract. That sounded good at the time. And so it actually took a year and a half to secure the contract. I had to try out and do a play, a scene from a play. But that was how I started.
So then you took some time off and delved into carpentry, is that correct?
Because I had a child, my first child to feed, became a carpenter to make ends meet, put food on the table. And during about a 10-year period, I only did an acting job if it was a better job than I'd had before, if it was more ambitious. And so I did 3 acting jobs during that period of time. They were American Graffiti, The Conversation, and a little scene, piece of work that Stanley Kubrick did for television called The Court Martial of Lieutenant Calley. And then Star Wars came along.
So is it true that
You saw that?
So is it true that you met Lucas at his home when you were working on his cabinets?
No.
So that's hearsay. How did you and Lucas meet?
We met doing American Graffiti. I was introduced to him. I actually wasn't introduced to him. I was there was a casting call for a character in American Graffiti, and George Lucas was some guy sitting in the back of the room and never said anything. And I got a call from the casting director and the producer of the film, a guy named Fred Roos. And he said, George would like you to play a part in American Graffiti. I said, how much? He said, $485 a week. And I said, you got to be kidding. He said, I'm a carpenter. I have a job. I make like $16 an hour. I can't take the cut in pay. I got a kid to feed. $485, and I hung up. And they called back in about 2 or 3 hours, and Fred said, I've been going through the budget with Gary Kurtz, and we found a little bit more money for you. And I said, how much? And he said, $500. And I said, I'll take it. That's a true story. The story you're talking about comes years later when he was casting Star Wars and had let all of the agents and representatives of the people who were involved in American Graffiti know that he wasn't going to use anybody from American Graffiti. He was looking for new faces. And I was installing an elaborate portico entrance to Francis Coppola's offices at Goldwyn Studios at the behest of his art director, who couldn't find anybody else to install this millwork. And I only worked at night, so I didn't have to mix up people's minds about what I did for a living. And early, the last part of the job, I was finishing up early one Monday morning, and I didn't quite get out of there in time, and George came in to do the first of the casting meetings for Star Wars. And contrary to the earlier mentioned restriction against anybody that he'd worked with before, he came in with Richard Dreyfuss. Who, as far as I know, is not in Star Wars. Yet. So I just met him and said, hi, how you guys doing? And a few days later, I was asked by George if I would read with the other actors. No indication that I might be considered for a part in the film, but would I sit with all of the other candidates and read the few scenes that anybody could see, since they were closely guarding the full script. So everybody got a couple of pages of dialogue, and I was meant to explain to them what the movie was about, and to read with them. And I read with about 300 actors, and weeks later, a month later, they asked me if I wanted to play Han Solo.